It was the full Westbrook experience. And I called their game against the Warriors earlier this season in March. And one of the things that really stood out of that game, because he didn't shoot the ball well that game either, but just the amount of plays he makes that impacts the game. And in that game in particular, I think he had 3 offensive rebounds that led directly to points where he's similar to the offensive rebound last night, where he's flying in. He's not just like standing there and the ball comes to him. He's flying in. He's making a play. He's pursuing the basketball, and good things lead to that. I thought defensively, we're going to, show that Devin Booker block over and over again, and then the save off of Booker's body to retain possession. But in watching that first half when he was matched up with Durant a lot, I thought his defense was phenomenal. His pursuit of the basketball, he had a rear view block. He had multiple rear view contests on Durant pull-ups against drop coverage. There was one time where Durant came off a pick and tried to beat the big. I mean, really looked to turn the corner on the left side, and Westbrook continued in pursuit, knocked the ball out of bounds. Like, the full effort defensively was on display for Russell Westbrook. So give him a lot of credit despite a poor shooting night. It was good to see. Kawhi was masterful, of course, last night. 13 of 24 from the field overall, 3 of 5 from 3, 9 of 10 from the free throw line. I've said this a number of times. The mid-range brilliance is the closest thing that I can remember to Jordan. And, of course, Kobe's shot making was, I think, a little different. There's something about it's not robotic, but it's so precise. Everything Kawhi does is so precise. And it reminds me a lot of Jordan. A couple things on the matchup. So a lot of Torrey Craig, a lot of Kevin Durant, a lot of Booker ended up guarding Kawhi in one-on-one. And I watched the game last night, but I reviewed all of his shot attempts this morning on Second Spectrum, all 24 of them. They didn't double him once. And I think that's maybe an adjustment going forward. I go back to the Mavs series. I obviously wasn't playing, but the Mavs series from 2021, where it became apparent that the efficiency, he's just so efficient. Yeah. And so at some point you have to double him some. 19, we did that as well with the Sixers as the series wore on. We pick and chose our spots of when to double. And so that's something that I think adjustment-wise that I would look to see, especially if Westbrook is on the floor, right? You have someone I would consider he's going to shoot the ball, but not a great shooter. You have a guy that you can double off of. So whoever's guarding him, of course, you have to be aware for the cuts and the rip and goes and all that. But that's an adjustment I think the Phoenix Suns can make. The one point I want to make on Kawhi, which it was beautiful to watch. He had 2 moves in the second half where he's going, the ball's in his left hand, 1-2 pivot game. So he goes right foot into his left foot, shot fake. So his right foot's his pivot foot. And then he stepped through with his left foot, and right foot comes off the floor, and he made 2 tough shots like that. And you see Monty Williams on the sideline. That's a travel. Give a shout out to my guy, MDW Basketball, Milton Davis, who has one of the best Instagram accounts out there explaining all of the rules that exist in FIBA, in the NBA, at the college and high school level, what is and isn't a travel at different levels. That is a legal move. It's in some ways similar to Jokic's move last night in the first half when he did a reverse spin and kind of stepped through. It's a legal move by the rule book. That is legal to do.
I wanted to ask about KD for a second. Do you think, he ended up 27 points. He didn't score, I think, in the whole first quarter, and then he didn't take a shot in the last 5 minutes. Do you think moving forward, another adjustment, and obviously they're still feeling out him on this team, but do you think there's an adjustment of just getting him more active early and then also understanding, like, it's the last 5 minutes of a 1-2 possession game, get Kevin Durant the ball. I don't care what's happening, get him the ball.
So on the early part, I attribute that to just, it's game 1 of the playoffs. There's some nervous energy. Everybody's you haven't settled in yet. And so you're just kind of feeling it out. This is also only his 9th game in a Phoenix Suns uniform. I'm not necessarily worried about that. Yes, I do think they should feature him as much as possible. It's Kevin Durant. So he made a jumper to give Phoenix the lead 96-95 with 6:50 to go. He had one shot the rest of the game, which he made. But for a 5-minute stretch, he had no touches that led to a direct action, i.e. a shot, a foul, an assist opportunity, a turnover. He only had 2 touches, period, over the last, or in clutch time. There was 4 minutes and 51 seconds of clutch time last night where the game was within 5 points and under 5 minutes to go. No field goal attempts, no free throw attempts. That of course, you brought this guy in.
Yeah,
you brought this guy in for this reason.
McHale and 9 first-round picks for him. Give him the ball.
It was interesting. Another fun thing to watch in this series is that matchup between KD and Leonard. Leonard guarded Kevin Durant 28 different times in the half court. And we don't see that as much in the NBA where we see star players guarding each other. It's one of the reasons this series is so fascinating. So here's a couple sort of ancillary notes on the game, and then we can move on. I thought the Clipper bench was phenomenal last night. Norman Powell, scoring-wise, had a big night, but all of those guys, Plumlee was a plus 16, Bones Highland was a plus 13, Terrence Mann was a plus 13, Norman Powell was a plus 11. Again, 2 of those guys came over at the trade deadline. Mann is one of the guys that I highlighted in the Islands of the League video that I think could be a real Alfred for this team, a real role player that makes a difference. We know about Norman Powell's scoring, of course, but Mann to me is a guy that can step in at different times and guard multiple positions and have some big offensive nights, which we saw in that Utah Jazz series a couple years ago. And then for Phoenix, they've got to. I know this is a team that plays in the mid range. I know that, but you got to figure out a way to shoot more threes. They shot 19 threes last night. Give some credit to the Clippers. Zubac played 30 minutes, I think, last night. He's going to play drop coverage. They primarily played pick and roll 2v2. They didn't overhelp. There wasn't a lot of spray out and kick out passes. So give the Clippers some credit on that. They did a great job, as mentioned, of those rear view contests from the mid-range pull-ups. But you're not going to win many playoff games, period, shooting 6 for 19. And Booker, Paul, and Durant went 3 for 11 from 3. So that to me is like, let's figure out ways to get Kevin the ball in better positions. Let's figure out ways to generate some threes. And then we're going to have to make, especially without Paul George, we're going to have to make some adjustments on Kawhi about double teams. That to me is sort of what I'm looking for going into game 2.
The other thing I wanted to bring up, which I think is a trend from a bunch of these games this weekend, we'll get to with some of the next games we're talking about. Clips were 15 to 6 on the offensive glass, and obviously down the stretch that mattered. Is that something that you just expect in general with the way the way this roster is set up, that they're probably going to get beat there? And so maybe it's like make that margin a little smaller?
It's a good question. And I think that's the value of Zubac. He does such a good job of getting offensive rebounds, keeping possessions alive. He's a big guy. I mean, he's a really big guy. So having him on the court doing that, and then Westbrook again just pursuing the basketball and sort of it's weird because you think of free safeties as defensive players, but almost on offense at times he's a free safety.
Yeah.
Especially when teams are ignoring him. Think about it. If you're playing help defense off of him, he's now seen this for a few years since he's been off the ball more with the Lakers and now with the Clippers. And so he's taken advantage of that. He's got a free run into the basket. So yeah, I think it's a valid question. And I don't necessarily, because I do think Kevin Durant is a good defensive rebounder. I think Chris Paul, Devin Booker for guards have been good defensive rebounders. Like, they're going to play a certain way. You have to be willing to give up when you're going against size, to be willing to give up some offensive rebounds. It's the nature of their team. But it is something to look for going forward. If you want to watch the rest of the episode, check out The Old Man of the Three Things, available exclusively on Amazon Music.